We're going to change the hammer hooks on a Ruger 1022. This is an older model hammer that requires the 2 bushings that go on the side. If you'll note, the new hammers are MEM'd, and they have the bushings MEM'd in with the hammer, so this adapter will not work with the new model 1022 MEM'd hammers. So if you read your instructions, it'll tell you that the pivot pin is 218, which is your 732 pin. That's the largest pin that you have with a universal hammer adapter kit. And the stop pin is a 3/16 or the 187. So that's like that. Put that on there. Now if you'll notice, it's similar to the picture, and you'll see it's cocked just a little bit of an angle in the fixture. So the adapter is the same, nearly the same, setting like that. So that's the holes and the pivot pins and the stop pin that you're going to use. So we'll take those off. You notice it says B side up. So we put the A side to the back, the B side to the front. We started 20 clicks up on your elevator with the lock knob tight. And if you look at it, we put it at a slight angle, similar to the picture. So now we'll put our pins in it. Pivot pin. There's your stop pin. Going to put the hammer on it. Right there. Now, all we got to do is decide if we're at the right angle or not. Now, if the angle needs changing, you just use your Allen wrench with the ball end on it, insert it to the adapter retainer screw, and you can turn it just a little bit and tighten it just not real tight, because you might want to rotate this by hand. So that's your position that you're in. Be sure that your stone fits in there. Now if I use this position, my stone is too tight. So what I have to do is adjust this. So I loosen the stone, move it back a fraction, put it in there and try that. Now that's enough to look at right there, because we're going to hold the stone into the hammer. So when you look at it, to see that the hammer hooks are parallel with the bottom of the stone. And that is a starting point. Use marking fluid or blue Dykem on these hammer hooks. When it dries, you lightly stone it and see where you're at. Put it on there and lightly stone it, holding pressure against the hammer and down on the stone guide. And then you look at your mark. And it may be necessary that you have to come up or down. Generally, these hammers are undercut from the factory, so you'll want more of a neutral angle on here. So if you start like that with the factory angle, then what you got to do is come up with your elevator and come up like 4 or 5 clicks. Don't just come up 1 click on your elevator wheel. So you loosen the lock knob, raise your elevator, and go like 4 or 5 clicks at a time. Tighten your lock knob, and then re-stone your hammer hooks until you get them neutral or close to neutral, and keeps the hammer from camming to the rear, gives you a better trigger pull. Then the next thing you do after you do the hammer and you're happy with it, that it's not going to cam back, you have to work over the sear. There's one thing that you can do. The old sears, you can use a Series 1 stoning fixture and stone your sear angle and come out with a pretty decent trigger. The Series 1 will not work with the MEM'd sears. If you'll notice, the new model MEM'd sears, this is your sear face, and this face is lower than the front of this sear, so when the stone goes in there, it can't stone down enough to get to that face without hitting this area here. So you either have to grind this face off or throw that sear away and get you an aftermarket sear or an old model sear and do your trigger job with it. Or this is a 1022 MEM'd hammer. And you see how that hammer has what was the bosses, the bushings that went on the side of the old hammer. They're molded or MEM'd, so to speak, right on this. So that hammer's used almost exactly like it probably comes out of the mold. they might accidentally cut that. But this can also be used on this second generation universal stoning fixture, and we use what we now have a M16 Series 2 adapter, and it'll also work for this hammer if you insist on using it. But I would recommend purchasing an aftermarket hammer and trigger set from several different manufacturers, as I believe they're far superior than the MEM'd parts. As you'll notice, there's a lot of gunsmiths won't even work on a firearm that has MEM'd parts in it. So that's the 1022 hammer.